So, what do online payments, electric cars, and yeah, rockets to Mars, what do they all have in common? Well, it's one person's just completely escalating ambition. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible journey of Elon Musk. We're going to chart his path from, a young coder in South Africa, all the way to the industrial titan who's, well, he's actively reshaping our future.
I mean, it's a question that's kind of captivated everyone, right? How does a kid coding video games become the guy behind SpaceX and Tesla? How do you make that kind of monumental leap from the digital world into the physical one, tackling some of humanity's biggest challenges? It's really a story of relentlessly escalating ambition, and we're about to break it all down for you, step by step.
All right, so our story kicks off, like a lot of these do, way back in his childhood. We're starting in Pretoria, South Africa, because that's where the first signs of his, let's say, unique drive and talent, they started to show up really early. Yeah, his path was pretty much set from a super young age. I mean, he wasn't just playing with computers, he was creating with them. Just think about this for a second. At only 12 years old, he'd already coded and sold a video game to a magazine. That's not just a hobby, right? That's the mind of an entrepreneur already fired up, seeing a market and building something for it.
So when he was 17, he made a really pivotal move. It was driven by two things, really, his principles and a hunt for opportunity. On one hand, he was unwilling to support the compulsory military service that was happening at the time. But on the other, he was just drawn by the massive economic possibilities he saw over in the United States.
And that drive for opportunity? It led him straight to a super prestigious PhD program in physics at Stanford, which he then left after only 2 days. 2 days! So why the sudden change of heart? Well, he saw that the internet wasn't just some passing trend. It was a massive, fundamental shift for society. And he just knew, he had to be right in the middle of it. And let me tell you, that bet on the internet, it paid off. Big time. And it paid off fast. This next chapter is so important because this is where he built the foundation, the capital, for everything that was going to come next. I mean, the speed of his success here is just remarkable. Look at this. In 1995, he starts Zip2. 4 years later, boom, it sells for over $300 million. He immediately rolls that money into his next venture, founding X.com, which would eventually become PayPal. And then just 3 years after that, it gets sold to eBay for a whopping $1.5 billion. So in just 7 years, he went from being a new entrepreneur to a billionaire. Wild. Okay, so you've just made an absolute fortune from the internet. What do you do next? For most people, it'd probably be another app, right? Another website. But for Musk, nope. The next problem he wanted to solve wasn't even on Earth. It was, and I mean this literally, out of this world. And this wasn't just about being curious about space. For Musk, space exploration is basically an insurance policy for all of humanity. And that core belief, that conviction, is what drove him to tackle one of the absolute hardest and most expensive industries on the planet. And he did it using a way of thinking he applies to pretty much everything. First principles. He saw this massive bottleneck right away. His big vision was completely impossible if rockets stayed so insanely expensive. So he just broke the problem down. Why are they so expensive? Well, it turns out it's because they're basically thrown away after just one use. And instead of just accepting that, he decided, nope, I'm going to build a whole new system from scratch. And that's why he founded SpaceX, with the one single goal of making rockets reusable. And the result of that mission? It's been absolutely astonishing. I mean, look at this direct comparison. The Falcon Heavy rocket can carry almost twice the payload of its main competitor, the Delta IV Heavy. That's huge. But the truly game-changing part of this whole equation, it's the cost. 1/3. That's not just a little improvement. That is a complete and total reimagining of the economics of flying to space. It makes getting it to orbit so much cheaper and so much more common. So while he's busy literally reinventing rocket science, Musk is also funding another revolution right here on the ground. Turns out he'd had a long-held interest in electric cars, and he saw another old established industry that was just ripe for a shakeup, using that exact same first principles way of thinking. And this wasn't just some random effort. It was a master plan, executed in 3 really clear steps. Step 1, the Roadster. It was all about proving that an electric car could actually be cool and have a decent range. Step 2, the Model S and X. This was about conquering the luxury market, proving an EV could totally outperform fancy gas cars. And finally, step 3, the Model 3. This was the big one, bringing that tech to the masses and in the process becoming the best-selling EV of all time. It just completely changed the car world. So after completely disrupting the space and car industries, you'd think maybe he'd slow down a bit, right? Nope. Musk's ambitions just kept escalating, moving into ideas that honestly feel like they've been pulled straight out of a science fiction novel. All right, first up, the Hyperloop. He was just dissatisfied with the plans for high-speed rail, so he proposed a totally new way to get around. We're talking about traveling at nearly the speed of sound, inside a pod, through a tube. Think about it, a trip from LA to San Francisco in just 35 minutes. That's not an improvement, it's a radical reimagining of how we even think about moving between cities. And then there's Neuralink, which is maybe the most ambitious project of them all. We're not talking about transportation anymore. This is about the very nature of human consciousness itself. The goal here is to integrate our brains directly with AI. The idea is to start by treating really severe neurological conditions, but the long-term goal? To eventually enhance human cognition itself. Yeah, it's a big one. So from coding a video game at 12 years old to building companies that are fundamentally challenging our ideas about everything, transportation, energy, even our own biology, it's trajectory unlike anything else we've really seen. And as his projects keep pushing the boundaries of what we all think is possible, it leaves us with a final, really fascinating question to think about.